Hi guys, this is CA Balakrishna from Lecturepedia.in. In this class, we will be revising SF 530 Audit Sampling. First of all, why auditor uses this audit sampling? See, basically, auditor needs to perform audit procedures. Now, if auditor goes on performing audit procedures on all the data that is available with the auditor, then first of all time will not be sufficient. Okay, keeping in this mind, auditor will perform audit procedures only on some of selected data. Okay, now how to select this data on which the audit procedures has to be performed? Okay, this will be dealt by sampling. Okay, auditor will select the data based on sampling sampling technique. Thereby, what is meant by audit sampling? Okay, the official definition is application of audit procedures to less than 100% of the population is known as audit sampling. Okay, in audit sampling, auditor will perform audit procedures on only selected data. Okay, he will not perform audit procedures on entire population. Hope this is clear. Now obviously, since auditor performs audit procedures only on sample, okay, but the auditor gives his opinion on entire population. Okay, now the opinion that auditor draws by performing audit procedures on this sample only might be different from the opinion that the auditor would have been drawn if he has applied audit procedures on the entire population. Okay, now here under audit sampling, auditor is applying audit procedures only on sample data. Okay, but he has to give his opinion on entire population. Okay, thereby there is a chance that the opinion that the auditor has drawn might be different. Okay, the opinion that the auditor has drawn might be wrong. This situation will be known as sampling risk. Okay, next point is that only sampling risk that auditor's conclusion based on sample may be different from conclusions if entire population were subjected to same audit procedures is known as sampling risk. Now this sampling risk can be of two types. First of all, in case of test of controls, see, auditor has performed audit procedures and concluded that controls are working effectively. Okay, this is the conclusion that the auditor has reached. Okay, the conclusion is that controls are working effectively, but actually controls are not working effectively. Okay, the first risk is that auditor might give his opinion stating that controls are working effectively, but in fact they are not working effectively. This is the first risk. Second risk, in the second risk, auditor concludes that controls are not working effectively, but actually controls are working effectively. Okay, these are the two types of risks under test of control. See, controls are more effective than they actually are. Okay, actually controls are not that much effective, but the auditor gives his opinion that controls are effective. Okay, that is the first risk. Next, controls are less effective than they actually are. Okay, actually controls are more effective. Okay, they are working effectively, but the auditor wrongly gives his opinion that controls are not working effectively. Okay, now what is the we'll also see second type of risk, then we'll evaluate it. Second type is related to test of details. Okay, based on audit procedures on the audit sample, auditor concludes that there are no misstatements in the financials of the entity, but actually there are many misstatements. Okay, there are many material misstatements in the entity. This is the first type of risk. Second type of risk, auditor concludes that there are many misstatements in the entity, but actually there are no misstatements. See, material misstatements exist when in fact they does not exist. Okay, actually there are no material misstatements, but auditor gives his opinion stating that there are material misstatements. Next, material misstatement does not exist when in fact it does. Okay, there are material misstatements in the entity, but auditor gives his opinion stating that there are no material misstatements in the entity. Now from this 4, which will be more dangerous? Okay, see, let us start from here. First one, controls are more effective than they actually are. Okay, actually controls are not effective, but auditor gives his opinion stating that controls are more effective. This is danger. Okay, in fact controls are not working properly, but auditors gives opinion stating that controls are working properly. Okay, this is dangerous. Next, controls are less effective than they actually are. Okay, actually controls are working very effectively, but auditor gives his opinion stating that controls are not working effectively. Okay, this is not much dangerous. Okay, because in actuality the controls are working properly. Okay, there is nothing deficient in the controls, they are working properly, but auditor gives opinion that the controls are not working properly. There is nothing danger in this. Okay, we cannot consider it as more risk. Okay, next, material misstatements exist when in fact it does not exist. Okay, actually there are no material misstatements, but the auditor gives opinion stating that there are material misstatements. This is not much riskier, but the second one is much riskier. Material misstatements does not exist when in fact they exist. Okay, actually there are misstatements in the financials, but auditor gives opinion that there are no material misstatements. This is more riskier. Okay, now these two green highlighted points, which are more riskier, they will affect the effectiveness of the audit. Okay, what is meant by effectiveness? Basically the objective of the auditor is to identify material misstatements in the financials of the entity. This is the objective of the entity. Now in these two cases, auditor is not able to achieve his objective. Okay, thereby it is affecting the effectiveness of the audit. Okay, effectiveness means achieving the objective. Achieving objective. If auditor has achieved his objective, then we will say that audit is more effective. If auditor fails to achieve his objective, then we will say that audit is less effective. Okay, now these two highlighted points will affect the effectiveness of the audit, and remaining two, these two will affect the efficiency of the audit. Efficiency means, see here in these two cases there are no misstatements in the entity. Okay, but audit procedures performed by, there is something wrong in the audit procedures that are performed by the auditor, thereby audit procedures are showing that there are misstatements in the entity. Now in order to prove this wrong, okay, in order to prove this as wrong, auditor needs to perform further audit procedures. Okay, he needs to extend his audit work. Okay, it takes more time in this case. Okay, because there are no misstatements in the entity, but the procedures that are being performed by the auditor are not sufficient to prove that there are no misstatements in the entity, thereby he needs to perform more and more procedures. Okay, thereby this will affect the efficiency of the audit. Okay, efficiency means achieving the audit objective with less resources. Okay, that would be known as efficiency. Okay, this is sampling risk. This is the entire concept of sampling risk. Next, steps in audit sampling. Okay, when auditor decides to perform his audit procedures on sample data, how the auditor will go ahead, what are the steps that the auditor will perform? First of all, auditor will determine sample design, sample size, and he will select the items for testing. Okay, this is the first step that the auditor will perform. Now while performing these steps, there are certain considerations that the auditor has to keep in mind. What are they? See, while designing the sample, auditor should consider purpose of audit procedure and characteristic of population. Okay, based on characteristics of the population and based on the purpose for which the sample is being designed, auditor has to design the sample. Okay, next, in case of determining sample size, auditor should determine the sample size in such a way that the selected sample size will reduce the sampling risk. Okay, sufficient to reduce the sampling risk. Next, he must select the sampling units. Okay, sampling unit selection should be in such a way that each sampling unit in the population has a chance of selection. Okay, all the units of the population are having equal chance of being selected. Okay, these are the considerations that the auditor should keep in mind while determining sample design, sample size and selection of sampling units from the population. Hope this is clear. Now, for the purpose of selection of sampling units, okay, for the purpose of sampling, there are certain methods that the auditor can use. What are those methods? Sampling selection methods. Sampling selection methods. First of all, there is random sampling. Now, for the purpose of this sampling methods, I'll tell you an example. With that example, we'll understand all the sampling methods. Let's say population consists of, okay, population consists of apples. Okay, now the color of apples are red apple, green apple, blue apple and white apple. Okay, these are the 4 types of apples that are present in the population. Okay, there are various numbers of apples. Okay, but the colors are these 4. Okay, now this is the example. Now we'll discuss the sampling techniques with the help of this example, starting with random sampling. Okay, simple random sampling. Okay, in case of simple random sampling, auditor will select the samples randomly. Okay, without any proper method, he will randomly select the items. That is simple random sampling. Okay, now here various apples are present now in the population. Okay, from these apples he will randomly select the apples as samples. Okay, that is simple random sampling. Moving to stratified random sampling. What is this stratified random sampling? In case of stratified random sampling, auditor will first of all prepare stratas. Okay, each strata will have homogeneous population. Okay, let's say under first strata, auditor has taken all the red apples. Under second strata, auditor has taken all green apples. Under third strata, auditor has taken all blue apples. Under fourth strata, auditor has taken all white apples. Okay, like this, first of all, auditor will divide the entire population into various stratas. Now he will apply random sampling. Okay, simple random sampling to this stratas. Okay, in this red apple strata, he will randomly select some of the apples as sample. In this green apple strata, he will randomly select apples. Okay, this is how stratified random sampling works. Okay, that is stratified random sampling. Now moving to interval sampling. Interval sampling. Under interval sampling, we further have block sampling and cluster sampling. Now people will confuse between cluster sampling and stratified sampling. So first of all, we will discuss this cluster sampling. Okay, here we have seen that under stratified sampling, auditor will first of all determine stratas. Okay, he will divide the entire population into stratas. Now under cluster sampling, auditor will divide the entire population into clusters. Okay, under cluster 1, he will take one red apple, one green apple, one blue apple, one white apple. Under second cluster, he will again take one red apple, one green apple, one blue apple, one white apple. Again, third cluster, one red apple, one green apple, one blue apple, one white apple. Again, fourth cluster, one red apple, one green apple, one blue apple, one white apple. Now, the difference between this stratified random sampling and cluster sampling is that in case of stratums, all the population in each stratum will be homogeneous in nature, whereas in case of a cluster, all the population of each cluster will be heterogeneous. Okay, but all the clusters will be homogeneous. Okay, here all the stratum will be heterogeneous. Hope you are understanding the difference. Now from these clusters, auditor will randomly select any of the clusters. Okay, and on those clusters he will perform audit sampling. Hope this is clear. This is the difference between stratified random sampling and cluster sampling. Okay, next moving to block sampling. See, under block sampling, let's say there are 2000 invoices, 1 to 2000 invoices. Now under this block sampling, auditor will select a block of 50 to 100 invoices. Okay, this is the block that has been selected by the auditor as sample. Okay, under block sampling, the sampling units will be sequential in nature. Okay, this is block sampling. Next, monetary unit sampling. This is very simple. Okay, auditor will determine a certain monetary unit of, let's say, 1 lakh rupees, and all the amounts that are more than 1 lakh will be selected as a sampling unit by the auditor. That is monetary unit sampling. Moving to haphazard sampling. Basically, haphazard sampling is a sampling in which no particular technique is followed. Okay, no technique is followed. No technique is followed. Okay, it is non-structural, non-structured sampling where no technique for selection of items is followed. These are the sampling methods through which the samples are selected. Now once the sample selection has been completed, auditor will perform his audit procedures on the audit samples. Okay, he will perform audit procedures. After performing audit procedures, auditor will identify obviously some misstatements. Okay, he will determine nature and cause of deviations and misstatements in the samples. Okay, he has identified some misstatements in the samples. Now he will determine nature and cause of these misstatements. Now basically auditor has to give his opinion on entire population, but auditor has performed audit procedures on only sample, thereby, and from sample auditor has identified certain misstatements, but auditor needs to give opinion on population. Now what the auditor will do is, auditor will project the misstatements to entire population. Okay, he will decide if these many misstatements are identified in this much of sample, then how many misstatements could be identified in the entire population. Like this he will project the misstatements. Okay, and after that he will evaluate the results of audit sampling. Okay, this is the revision of essay 530. By this revision of essay 530, audit sampling has been completed. In the next video we will be revising essay 540, and in case you want to purchase regular classes for paper 4 law and paper 6D economic law at CA final level, you can visit our website lecturepedia.in and you can purchase from our website. And in case you want to join our Telegram channel, the link for the Telegram channel will be given in the description, and you can join the Telegram channel from the link. Okay, we'll meet in the next class.